Welcome to Live with the Eczema Doc, brought to you by Clean Body, where we believe that you can heal your skin from within by cleaning your body. I'm Dr. Fong, a naturopathic doctor specializing in eczema, and I'm here to guide you through the journey of understanding the root causes of your eczema so that you can finally achieve the clear, healthy skin you deserve. Each week, we combine research-backed insights, science-based strategies, and my years of clinical experience to uncover what's really triggering your eczema and how you can take control for lasting relief. Let's dive into today's episode and uncover the next step to healing your skin from within. This is Live with the Eczema Doc, and today I am going live to talk about your skin barrier, the lipid connection. And this is really important if you have eczema, because one of the reasons that we have eczema is that the barrier is breaking down. And so really understanding why this is the case can really help you get down to the root cause from the topical perspective. And then, of course, we always want to look at the internal perspective as well. So today we are going to be breaking down that skin barrier, both from the inside and the outside. We are going to be covering the brick wall model. What is your skin barrier made of? What goes wrong? Why do we have eczema? What are the abnormalities on our skin that cause the eczema to flare? The vicious cycle, how inflammation makes this so much worse. And the truth about moisturizers, what the research actually shows, what supplements can you use to support the skin barrier? All right, so what is the brick wall model? If you have not thought about this before, I want you to think about it now. Your skin is basically made up of bricks and the mortar in between those bricks. Okay, so if you think about a brick, you know, those red bricks and then the white mortar in between, the bricks represent your skin cells. And the white mortar that's normally on a brick wall is the ceramides, cholesterol, and fatty acids. These are the lipids that make up almost like the glue that holds your skin cells together, okay? And that glue is what goes wrong when we have eczema. So in a very intact barrier, very healthy, hydrated, glowing skin, this barrier is extremely intact. All of these lipids are really intact. 50% of those lipids are what are called ceramides, something you might have heard of in ceramide creams. Cholesterol, 25%, and fatty acids are 15%. All of these are types of fats. They are lipids. In an eczema barrier, we see gaps. We see water loss, and irritants can come in through these gaps. And I also like to call this leaky skin, which is one of the root causes of eczema that I have identified. And so if you think about this, the mortar or those lipids that hold the skin cells together are really, really important. And we really need to think about these pillars of your lipid barrier. So ceramides, as I mentioned, are the most abundant. They're about 50% of this mortar that's making up that lipid barrier. The cholesterol is 25%, and this really stabilizes that structure. And then the free fatty acids fill those gaps between the ceramides, and this is about 15% of that lipid barrier. So what goes wrong in eczema? Well, we see that there are lower ceramide levels, which means there's less of that glue holding the skin cells together. They are short chain ceramides instead of longer chain ceramides, and these shorter chain ceramides can't pack very tightly, and therefore we see these gaps in the skin. And then we have kinked fatty acids. This disrupts the organized lipid structure. And because of this, we have transepidermal water loss, which means that water is leaking through, and not just water, but irritants as well are leaking into the system, potentially increasing that inflammatory response. And if you're not watching this, if you're listening to this on my podcast, then let me just describe. So healthy skin has these long chain ceramides. They are about 24 to 32 carbons. And because of these longer chain ceramides, they can pack really tightly.
And therefore, this barrier becomes really strong, no to minimal water loss, and irritants are not leaking into the skin. But in eczema skin, we see these shorter chain ceramides between 14 to 24 carbons, and we see that there are little gaps because these ceramides are shorter, okay? This creates loose packing and a very leaky barrier or leaky skin, as I call it, and water then escapes and then the irritants get in, and then those irritants will trigger immune responses that we see that create inflammation and itchiness and basically increasing all of these inflammatory cytokines in our body. A lot of those cytokines that medications suppress. But if we think about the root cause from a skin perspective, we really want to think about these fats in the skin barrier, okay? Because then we create this very vicious cycle. The barrier breaks down, the irritants and the allergens get in, the inflammation fires up, and those cytokines like IL-4 and IL-13 are released. And then there's a cycle because this blocks more ceramide production, creating more barrier damage. And this goes round and round and round and round. So our goal when I'm working with my eczema patients is to break this cycle, okay? So how do we break this cycle? Well, we are going to dive in to the moisturizer truth right now. There was a study and 555 children were studied, and they assessed all of the different types of lotions, creams, gels, and ointments that these children were putting on their skin. And they did not notice a difference between lotions, creams, gels, or ointments. Similar outcomes were shown. And what they found was the best moisturizer is the one that you will actually use. Okay, consistency is more important than the actual product. Ceramide moisturizers are not necessarily proven to be superior. And it's really important that you just feel comfortable with whatever you're using, that it makes you feel good, that it doesn't make you itchier, that if you have a yeast problem, you're choosing the right oils and you are choosing, of course, low allergen, low fragrance, low toxin products. That's the important part. But do you need to be choosing products that are full of ceramides and all of these factors that we get marketed towards? Do we need to do that? Well, the studies do not show that it makes a difference. And so, if you find an ointment, a cream, a gel, a lotion that you really like, then the important thing is that you need to be applying it about 2 times daily minimum. And you want to do that within 3 minutes of bathing or showering because we need to seal in that moisture. We need to occlude that barrier so that the water cannot be released. And so toxins cannot get into the skin. This is also very important if you're going into, let's say, like going into the pool or going into the ocean, because if you have eczema, you have leakier skin. We want you to put something on that's occlusive, meaning it fills up those gaps between the skin cells so that you don't get a lot of exposure to the toxins that might be in the pool or in the ocean, okay? So that is the most important thing. Now, can you take supplements to improve your skin barrier? Well, let's break down the evidence. The strongest evidence is for oral vitamin D first and foremost. And we want to make sure first and foremost that we test for vitamin D levels. But if vitamin D levels are really optimal, and for me, that's somewhere between 50 and 65 on a blood test, then we see that promotes a really strong barrier. Vitamin E is your next one. And we have seen that there has been a decrease when people take vitamin E along with vitamin D of 5.72 points on the SCORAD scale. This is a scale that dermatologists use to basically score how severe eczema severity is for an eczema patient. So we see that it does lower the symptoms. And then, as I covered in my last podcast episode, Live with the Eczema Doc, episode 22, I talked about topical B12. Topical B12 has pretty good evidence for reducing the eczema severity by about 55%. And it does that by actually decreasing that inflammation at the skin junction. And that decrease of inflammation actually does help that skin barrier to heal. So these options have the highest evidence, okay? Now, there are some options that are very promising. And you might have heard of L-histidine, for example, can be taken orally. This is an amino acid. And in pilot trials, we see that 34 to 49% of a reduction in eczema symptoms. So this is very promising and something that, we could definitely try, especially if we're working with a naturopathic doctor or somebody who is helping us to manage our supplements. Oral ceramides. These are one of my favorites. So oral ceramides. So, okay, those ceramides, those are 50% of our skin barrier. And we actually can take ceramides. One of the ones I use actually comes from wheat, and there is no gluten in this product, but they actually just take out the ceramide from the wheat. And this is something that you can take orally, okay? And so I love this one. And I do feel that my patients do say that they feel like they're actually holding on to more moisture when they take the oral ceramides. Probiotics. We see a 22% lower incidence in eczema. And so this can really be good for prevention as well, making sure that we're both getting this through supplements and even in the diet. And then zinc is something that, just like vitamin D, we want to test this first. And we only see that supplementing with zinc can help if you are actually deficient in zinc. And that's not going to be every eczema case. So not every eczema case needs to take zinc. But if we test for these levels and we see that they're low, then it can absolutely help. And it's very promising in the research. Okay. Now, what can you do that's not supplements? What can you do in your diet? And of course, there are a lot of things we can do in our diet. Of course, eating good fats can help promote the skin barrier. But the research is pretty clear that one of the most important things that we can do in our diet to improve the gut-skin axis and strengthen the skin barrier is actually to feed our good bacteria. And that is by eating fiber-rich foods. Things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and fermented foods can actually help those bacteria to produce what are called short-chain fatty acids. When those short-chain fatty acids reach your skin, this strengthens the skin barrier, okay? So if at the very minimum, this is what you're doing, you are trying to eat whole foods, colorful foods, fiber-rich foods, and this can really help in your diet. Okay. Breaking down the skin barrier is so important because we need to understand that that mortar, that glue that holds our skin cells together is super important. And there are so many things we can be doing to support that skin barrier, both in our diet and through supplements. I would love to open it up to questions now. What about tacrolimus? Tacrolimus is a conventional cream that you're going to put on your skin that basically it's non-steroidal, but it lowers the inflammation at the skin. So it doesn't necessarily fix the problem. It suppresses the inflammation so that we feel better, so we're not as itchy, which is a good thing because if we're not itching our skin, that can actually promote more barrier health. So it can be okay to use in the short term. But to me, this is not a long-term solution. This is not something that you can do for a long, long time and it's sustainable. There are some negatives. Sometimes people will report burning of the skin, and there are some black box warnings for cancer. So we want to be careful of those. And we want to use this medication tacrolimus sparingly because we don't necessarily want to depend on this medication. So I would say it can be very helpful in the short term, but not necessarily something that I like to use for the long term. Okay. Thoughts on NAC? Somebody's asking. All right, NAC. What is NAC, everybody? NAC is N-acetylcysteine. This is a precursor to creating glutathione. Glutathione is one of the master antioxidants in our body. And as an antioxidant, it is actually quite important for the eczema process. But I have some caveats here. When a patient has eczema, often they are overloaded with toxins. Sometimes, okay, not always, but they can be overloaded with toxins. And glutathione as an antioxidant is also supportive in the liver detoxification process. And so it can sometimes be problematic if an eczema patient has a lot of underlying toxicity and then they just take NAC or they take glutathione, and all of a sudden they might have a flare of symptoms. So this is something to pay attention to, and we don't typically want to start NAC or glutathione in the very beginning of treatment. We typically want to help open up the drainage pathways first, make sure that the core is supported. So things like vitamin D, omega-3s, zinc, vitamin E, L-histidine, those are all options first to make sure that things are supported before we start detoxing the system. But I absolutely love NAC when it comes to the part where we are ready for detoxification. When it comes to that part, then that's a great time to use NAC. And we have to understand, is it the right time? And typically, I don't necessarily use the NAC until the skin has gotten a little bit better, if it's a very severe case. And if it's not a severe case, then NAC might be appropriate. It just depends. So we would have to really assess the case and make sure that it's safe to start using something like NAC or something like glutathione. Okay. Key takeaways from today's live. Number one, your barrier depends on very specialized lipids. Number two, eczema equals very specific, measurable lipid abnormalities. Number three, inflammation makes barrier damage so much worse. Number four, moisturize consistently, and no product is proven superior. The product that you love the most, that feels the best on your skin, is the best product for you. Number five, vitamins D and E have the strongest evidence. So make sure that you are considering those, maybe getting tested for those and then taking those if you see that those are low for you. Number six, the gut-skin connection is real. Fiber matters. And finally, personalized approaches work best. So do some testing first. And if you are not working with someone to go deeper, we have a lot of free resources. So you can check out my Healing Kickstart guide, my free root cause assessment. My guide is free as well. And this full blog post actually breaks everything down. All the supplements and topicals that I mentioned here are linked in the blog post. So if you are on Instagram, just DM me barrier and you'll get the link for the post. You can also go to cleanbody.health to access all of these freebies, including my blog post and my Healing Kickstart guide. And finally, if you are looking for a personalized plan, I do offer an eczema clarity visit. So if you're looking to go deeper, those are all the options with a lot of freebies there.
Thank you for joining Live with the Eczema Doc. I hope today's episode provided you with valuable insights and tools to support your journey to healing your skin from within. For more information, visit www.cleanbody.health or check the links in the podcast description. You'll find the studies and resources discussed today on my blog. You can also take my free eczema root cause assessment to uncover potential triggers, or download my free eczema relief guide for quick, practical tips to calm flare-ups and help with your sleep. If you found this episode helpful, please remember to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to help others on their healing journey. And if you'd like to stay updated with future episodes, please turn on your notifications so you don't miss a thing. Please remember this podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare provider or book a consultation with me. When you clean your body, you heal your skin from within.